A very warm welcome to Rediscovering Childhood, a space where we have meaningful and practical conversations that reshape the way we understand childhood and rethink how we act, communicate, and think every day. My goal is to help you support your children in becoming the unique, amazing individuals they're meant to be, while we also work on becoming a better version of ourselves to role model what is truly possible. I'm your host, Mireia Lopez, and I combine my 16 years of experience across teaching, educational psychology, play therapy, and coaching with my personal journey as a parent, an entrepreneur, and someone who started a new life abroad, moving from Barcelona to Ireland 15 years ago. I'm also the founder of Discovery Playtime, an Irish business dedicated to creating learning through play experiences for children and teens and providing the supports that parents, teachers, and educators need to create more meaningful and joyful environments for the children in their care. Before we begin, please take a moment to subscribe or leave a review, or both. Your support helps us grow and continue our mission to empower parents and inspire a positive shift in the education system, which we all know we need. Now, let's dive into today's episode. What if the way you react to your child today has less to do with their behavior and more to do with the data stored in your brain from decades ago? Today, we are joined by Dr. Gloria Vanderhorst, a psychologist who transitioned from working with air quotation problematic preschool boys to helping their fathers escape what she calls the emotional desert. We're diving into how our culture systematically limits the emotional life of boys and men, and how being curious about your own past is the only way to truly be free and available for your children in the present today. If you've ever felt like your history is invading your parenting, then you cannot afford to miss this episode. Gloria, very welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. And I love the way that you described our topic, right? That we're going to look at how the past can jump into the present and basically surprise you, right? Bring pieces of history forward that many times you didn't even realize were there. So this is going to be a great conversation.
Absolutely. And that's really interesting because I think that's something, especially today's world where we're so busy and just on the let's do this, let's go, let's keep moving. And that really takes time to pause and stop and reflect. And it's by conversations like these where you bring the awareness and the noticing to what's possible, and it can really make a difference. But I'd like to start with the basics. We talk a lot about emotions and emotional awareness and emotional intelligence. What are emotions? What is an emotion? And what can we learn from our emotions once we know them?
An emotion is any reaction that we have to the world around us. We see a sunny day and it's been raining for a week and
As we
we're
know.
excited and it has meaning to you given your location, but we get excited. There's a smile that comes across our face, or we get a phone call and a friend of ours is just discovered to have cancer. Our face falls and our shoulders just crash because we can feel the distress that that person is carrying. So emotions are normal, natural reactions to anything that we experience in the environment around us. We're having emotions constantly. Even though we may not label them or talk about them, we're having emotions all the time.
So I suppose that links with the work that you do. So it is when you don't talk about them and when you don't name them, then you're kind of suppressing them.
That's right. That's
And is that
exactly
then
what you're
when
doing.
and then what happens then if that's what you do?
Well, if you are not able to identify and express that feeling, it does not go away. It hangs around and it does something to your body. Maybe it gives you headaches. Maybe your heart is strained. And over time, you have some form of heart disease. Maybe your stomach is upset and you end up with some intestinal problems. Maybe you eat too much and you end up being seriously overweight because that eating is not about nurturing your body. It is about stuffing emotions and holding on to emotions. So emotions are critical for all of us, but we don't do a good job of educating people about natural emotional experiences. We don't even have enough words for emotions. On my website, I have a list of emotions. It's 3 or 4 pages, 4 columns of words on each page. Some of them are positive, some of them are negative, but you would be shocked at the number of feeling states that we can experience. And it's free to download. So when somebody does download that, and let's say you put it on the kitchen table, and so when a child comes home from school and they're excited or distressed, they're definitely having an emotional moment, you can help them to increase the vocabulary and really identify the experience that they've brought home with them because your brain can recognize the feeling that you're experiencing. Even if you can't produce it, your brain is wonderful. It has a storehouse of every emotion that you're capable of experiencing. And even if you haven't used the word yourself before, it will pop off the page, right? And it'll just smack you in the face. Oh, yes, that's what I'm feeling because of this experience at school. So feelings are very important, and expanding your feeling vocabulary is critical.
That's incredible. And as you were sharing this, I was getting this picture in my mind of like a tunnel with a door at the end. And when you experience an emotion, it's like the door is closed. It's
Mm-hmm,
blocked. And
mm-hmm,
you can't get out. So the emotion
mm-hmm.
can't get out. And that
Right.
tunnel is our a representation of our body.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like there is a magic password. When you say
Right.
this password, the door opens and the emotion comes out. And the
Right.
password is the name of the emotion.
That's perfect. What a great image
Isn't it?
that
That's what
is.
I
I love
see,
it.
and then you just release, and sometimes and it's really interesting because we've been raised to think that by not naming these emotions, they disappear because 'cause we're not
That's right.
seeing it. If you can't say it, it doesn't exist, and it's the
Right.
opposite you're
But it,
saying.
it does not disappear, right? It goes underground. It goes in your body someplace and it gets held there until you can really identify it. Once you can identify it, you can talk about it, you can release it, you can modify it, you can get comfort for it. So naming the emotion is critical for all of us.
You talk about boys,
Mhm.
and you focus more about boys. Why is that, and what's the difference, and why do you not feel the need so much to work with female audience?
I started my private practice working with preschool boys, and that's just serendipitous, right? I didn't go into private practice to work with preschool boys. I had a friend who ran a preschool, and so she would naturally refer children to me if there were some concerns about how they're functioning in the preschool. And typically, they were always boys. And there's a good reason for that. Most preschools here are run by women, and boys are very different from little girls. And so the teacher has an affinity for the little girl, really understands what's happening with the little girl, but boys are more physical. They're more active. They're more energetic. Their bodies want to move all of the time. And so they don't sit in the circle and put their hands in their lap and listen intently. They want to fidget with something or they want to bump their neighbor, right? Their bodies are constantly in motion. And so these boys would be sent to me with the question of, does this boy have attention deficit? Many of them do not. A few of them did, but the majority of them just had boyhood as their issue,
There's
not
no
attention
diagnosis for
deficit.
that, though, is it?
There's no diagnosis for boyhood,
I
but
think I'd get diagnosed with boyhood.
they educated me. I learned so much about what it means to be a boy in this culture. And then their fathers started putting time on my calendar because their fathers, as preschoolers, had had similar experiences where they got noticed in a negative way, where they got called out for what I'm going to say is just normal, natural boy behavior. If I were in charge of preschools, I would make sure that there's a male teacher and a female teacher in every classroom so that the boy has someone who really understands all of that energy and all of the need to put their bodies in motion,
Mm.
right? They can be more intense on the positive end of the scale, and they can be more intense on the negative end of the scale. And that's not something that is like common knowledge. We don't account for it in the way that we look at structuring preschools. I say we should also put a tree in every preschool and listen to this story.
Yeah, and creating the right environment, whether you're a boy or a girl, or I would have been climbing trees anyway,
Yeah,
and I'm a
right,
girl, but it's always we're generalizing something that, there's probably different needs and different
right.
expectations, but it's having the environment that's right so everybody can find their own way of developing and fulfilling their needs.
That's right. And can find that sense of acceptance. That is so powerful, particularly at a very young age, that you feel like who you are is okay in this world and that there's someone that's going to enjoy your character and your way of expression and validate that you're a whole person. You're
And there's
welcome
nothing
in
wrong with
this
you.
world. And there's nothing wrong with you. No, it's just normal and natural to want to be able to move and be more active.
That's really important. And how much of our therapy as adults comes from undoing everything that we've created because we thought there was something wrong with us because we
That's
just
right.
didn't have the right environment and the right expectations from teachers
Right.
and other adults. So where do these expectations really come from?
Well, if you think about it, we do have really rigid expectations for boys. When boys start to walk, we begin to narrow the range of emotion that we allow them to express. Big boys don't cry. How many times do you think a little boy has heard that? They're toddlers. And they get sent that message that they're not supposed to cry. Crying is a normal, natural reaction to being offended, to being hurt physically. And we cut that off. I tell people, you go to a playground and notice the difference when a little girl gets pushed out of line for the slide and goes crying to mom or dad. She gets picked up, she gets comforted, she gets reassured, and then she gets sent back to stand in line. Little boy pushed out of line, cries, runs to mom and dad. He does not get picked up. He gets asked, "What happened?" If he gives a good enough explanation, he'll get some kind of comfort and assurance. If he doesn't give a good enough explanation, he'll immediately be turned around. But either way, he gets turned around without that physical comfort that the little girl got, which is very validating when you're a toddler. It's very important. He doesn't get that validation. He just gets turned around, go back, get yourself in line, and don't cry.
What would
That's
be
a
the right
powerful
answer?
message.
What would be the right answer to really empower their self-expression at that moment when they're crying, whether it's a boy or a girl? What would be the correct answer?
Comfort. If you're crying, you need physical comfort, skin on skin. So you do need to be picked up, or you need mom and dad to come down to your level, maybe sit on the ground and hold you for a moment. It doesn't have to be a long time, but I need that physical contact to reassure the child that they're okay and they are safe. And now you can muster your own resources and go back to the playground. It's critical. And we don't do that to boys. And we don't allow boys to express emotion on the negative end of the continuum unless it's anger. They can be angry, but they can't be sad. They can't be needy. They can't be lonely. All right. Think of all the things that we cut out of a preschool boy's life. It's staggering.
How
And
does that
then,
impact? Oh, sorry.
and then when they grow up,
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
right? They grow up and suddenly in intimate relationship, we expect them to be able to be tender, to be soft, or to be loving, to be gentle when we've spent their entire life telling them, don't go there. Don't use those feelings. Those feelings are feminine. They're not masculine. And so it's not surprising that the divorce rate is 50% or more because we've structured the male psyche so that you really can't be successful in an intimate relationship. It's really hard work for a guy to be successful in an intimate relationship.
So would that impact their adulthood as would they become maybe what we call emotionally unavailable or immature or maybe even narcissistic or all
Right.
these different
Yep.
extremes of
All
emotional
of this.
dysregulation?
Yep, absolutely all of those. And that's why our jails are full of men, not women, because men don't have access to the full range of feelings to be able to use language to describe what they're experiencing. So they use their bodies, and that's going to get you into trouble if you start shoving somebody around or throwing things or hit somebody. That's going to get you into big time trouble.
And that goes back to what we said at the beginning as thinking if we don't talk about this emotion, don't cry, it's not happening when it actually then look at the impact and the
Right. It has
consequences
a
of
very
that.
long-term impact, and it is critical that we, as a culture, really make that change. Now, I want to put a caveat in here, though. That training was adaptive because we send men to fight other men. We send men to war. And so the guy storming Omaha Beach, I don't want him being sensitive. I want him to cut off fear and anxiety and worry. I want him to be brave and courageous and to hit that beach on a run. But we don't conduct war that way anymore. We can afford to make a change at an early stage in the life of a male and give them more access to the full range of emotions. It's time to do that.
How do we start as parents or educators? What are the easy steps to take to start opening that space for
Yeah,
more
that's a
connection?
great question. So raise your consciousness by listening to things like this, and then take a look at the way that you respond to your little children. Is there a difference between the way that you treat your boy and the way that you treat your girl? Do you have this expectation that the boy should not cry when he falls down and skins his knee? The little girl can cry in that situation, but the little boy can't. I just heard a story the other day from children are now grown that she told this story about one of her boys when he was elementary school age. He broke his collarbone. And so she took him to the ER and the doctor's examining him and he is not crying. And the doctor says, breaking your collarbone really hurts. I'm surprised you're not crying." And he says, "Mama told me it doesn't hurt."
Wow.
And so we do that. We do that to boys. And by doing that, we limit their capability of finding their own feeling states and being able to use those feeling states to make connections with their spouses and with their children and with their friends. You'd be shocked at the number of men who have long term friends, male friends, and they have never discussed with them something that is really powerful and critical for them emotionally. They've kept all of that to themselves. It's shocking.
Is that from their own childhood, from being told that that's not okay to do
It's
that? That's
from
so
being
common,
told
so common.
boys are not supposed to basically have needs, right? They don't tap into those tender emotions. They're not supposed to have an emotional need, right? So the collarbone doesn't hurt. The fear that I'm going to contract a disease that traveled through my family for generations. I can't talk about that and let anybody know that I'm scared and I'm getting towards the age where I have to do all of this research to see if I carry this disease. We don't give men permission to real.
Now, let's imagine I have a husband like that. I'm single, by the way. But let's
Mhm,
imagine I have a husband like that, and I want to help him be more expressive and
mhm,
be okay with his emotions so he can do the same with our children. So he doesn't
mhm.
raise our children the
Right,
way he was brought up.
right.
Is it possible for me to do that, or does it have to be him? He wants to.
Well, the other side of the coin, right, is that we have also socialized females not to expect emotion out of a male. So when you grow up and you start dating and you find someone that you really like, you fall in love, you get married, your social training kicks in big time. Women will say that they would love it if their husband would open up to them, all right? If he would share more from a feeling perspective. But the truth of the matter is, we have socialized you to the point that you don't know what to do with that. So your husband comes home from work. He is obviously down for some reason. And the wife will ask, why are you down? What happened today? He'll give a headline. I was up for this promotion and Joe Schmo got it instead of me. And she will give a cursory response. Oh, I'm so sorry. I know that you were really working hard for that promotion. I think that's awful that they didn't choose you. And then she will have to go check something on the stove, or she will have to go back to her computer to finish an email that she was doing. She also has been socialized not to go into deeper emotional experiences with a male. And so the poor guy is left hanging there, right? He's got a story to tell, but she's not going to encourage him to share that story. But if it were her girlfriend, same exact experience, she would say, "Sit down. I'm getting us a cup of tea. I want to hear all about this." And she would take the time and spend the energy to listen to her girlfriend. So it's a double-edged sword. She's
That if he
also
had been trained to actually be okay with the
right.
emotions, then that means he actually wants to listen. But because if the male has been trained to not express emotions, he's also going to be emotionally unavailable. So he's not going to ask the
That's right.
questions or want to listen to her because it's too
Mhm.
much.
But
Yeah, I
what
see it's like
women
that.
could do is actually retrain themselves to be more welcoming and to be um, I'm going to say kind of quiet, right? Not fill in the gaps, but just invite. Tell me more of what you're experiencing. Where are you holding this in your body? Because we do hold emotions in our body. And if I'm curious about that, then the male is going to find where he holds this in his body and can begin to describe what that feels like. And you can begin to put some words to it.
And that's
And
exactly what we do with our children as well.
right,
Mm.
that's right.
So what other questions can we ask? Because I think for what I hear is the power of asking the right questions to allow that space of safety to open up.
Yeah, actually, that's very interesting because I tell people to eliminate questions.
Oh,
We are in the habit of asking questions. How do you feel about that? Why do you think they chose him? What do you think will happen for you? We're just full of questions. But questions are always threatening. Think about it, all right? You're walking down the street, someone coming towards you kind of stops you and says, "What time is it?" And you go, "I've got to give you the right time." Wrong or not, it has stirred up a little bit of anxiety for you. So questions always will stir up anxiety. And I say to people, think about taking that question, put it into a sentence. I want to know what happened is
mm,
very different from what happened. All right. I
that's
want
really
to
good.
know what happened is welcoming. It's inviting. It says, I'm here and I'm going to stay here until I get the story about that particular day for you.
And it's more about you as well. It's more about where I am. It's about
Hmm.
me. I'm not, whether you want to answer or not. It's like, this is
Right,
what I like.
right, right.
That's really welcoming. Absolutely. I love that.
Hmm.
You mentioned, and we speak in general in society, we talk a lot about negative emotions,
Hmm.
but all emotions are communication. They're telling us something. So, what do we learn from those negative, maybe uncomfortable emotions or challenging emotions?
That's
What
an
do we learn
excellent
from?
way to describe them, right? That they are uncomfortable, they are challenging, and they're powerful because those negative emotions, if they don't get expressed, they get housed in your body. That's the very last thing you want to do. You don't want to be packing these guys away into your muscles, into your gut, into your heart. You just don't want to do it. So it's critical that you educate yourself about the truth that you're capable of any emotion that a human being experiences. And you need to expand your vocabulary so you can label these things. And if you can label it, you can explore it. But if you can't label it, you can't explore it.
You talk about curiosity as well in relation to exploring emotions. So, it's about asking yourself, why am I feeling this?
Mhm,
Where does it come from?
mhm.
And do we then accept it, or do we try to change it, or do we just stay with it?
A variety of things can happen. Sometimes I'm gonna be satisfied with expressing it and talking about it. It just seems to give a lightness. I put it out there on the airwaves, and I'm content to just let it go. Sometimes it will lead to problem solving, to strategizing. So we'll take this guy who didn't get the promotion. If he has the opportunity to explore and to speak, he will begin to problem solve. And he'll figure out, do I stay here and modify what I'm doing so that the next promotion comes to me? Do I go look for another job? Do I go get some testing and figure out maybe I'm just not in the right profession? Right? I don't want to completely change my professional path. He's got options, but if he doesn't talk about it, he has no options. He's just stuck. And you don't want to be stuck because your body will hold that and some system will start to break down.
And the
That's
more
why
you
men die
practice,
younger. There is because they're holding these feeling states instead of expressing them.
they just run out of space to hold anything else.
That's right.
That's very interesting. Another word that I seen in your work, and that's very interesting, and I was actually searching what it means. It's exuberant.
Mhm,
And I searched, and it comes from the Latin, which is exuberare.
mhm,
That's my Spanish accent now,
mhm.
but
Great.
it's very Italian as well. Latin exuberare, which means it means to come forth in abundance.
Mhm,
And that impacts the physical, so someone who can't sit still. It
mhm,
impacts the emotional, someone who is overflowing with excitement.
mhm,
And it impacts the social, someone who is full of enthusiasm. And then we attribute labels of someone who is too much, someone who is hyperactive,
mhm,
someone who, made labels like ADHD, it might just be boyhood, as you called it earlier, and I agree. Someone too disruptive or problematic because of setting the wrong environment. It's like that says don't ever judge a fish for its ability to climb a tree because, like, a
Not
fish is
gonna
never going to
happen.
be able to climb a tree. So something like that. So how does what's really happening when we put these labels on children and we're not respecting their own real needs?
Well, first of all, exuberance is a lovely word. And I think by and large, children are just filled with exuberance. The world is brand new to them. So they're highly curious. They want to discover. They're interested in everything and they get excited. Exuberance is part of being a child. It's lovely to be able to hold on to that quality as you age. And it does happen for many people. We can get super excited about a new path at work, about a new skill that we're learning. So it's a part of being a human is to take this energy and apply it to the world and engage the world. So exuberance is a wonderful word to focus on and to keep in mind that we want to encourage that kind of excitement in our children, in both our boys and our girls, so that they can do a better job of discovering what are their strengths, right? What are their interests? What can they see themselves experiencing, not just today, next week, and further into the future so that they understand themselves better? We limit men and women, not so much more recently, but historically, we have really limited the direction that a male can go in and the direction that a female can go in as they mature and focus on careers and develop themselves as adults. And we should not be limiting any path for any male or female. You're capable of doing anything that you choose to do.
Yeah, and I think that takes us to one of the most interesting parts of your work, which is that limitation that we set for the children because it's inconvenient or because we think it's the way it should be and it's set
Mhm.
our own expectations. Are those limitations related to the way we were brought up, the things that our parents would have limited in ourselves that then we unconsciously or subconsciously then transfer that onto what we expect from our children,
Yeah,
for example?
absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that this is a generational process to pass from one generation to the next. The expectations of what character should you have based on your sex, right? Women should be gentle and kind and caring. Boys should be brave and courageous and exploring, right? So we have this dichotomy that we've had for generations. That dichotomy is in the process of disappearing, and that will be healthy for everyone if we can increase the range that both a male and a female can experience, then there won't be this isolation of, oh, you're a boy, so you can't have access to this feeling, or you're a girl, so you can't engage in this particular profession because you're a girl, and girls don't do that.
So it's just really bring more awareness to how we communicate, the things we say and we expect. And then you also talk about the storage, the brains being storage units from our
The
own
brain
past.
stores everything. If you the brain stores absolutely everything. In fact, I think it is shocking that it stores everything. And because it stores everything, you can actually have access to the things that it has boxed away or put in a safe someplace, so it's harder to get access to it. But because it does store everything, you can actually unbox things. You can
How do we
open
do that?
safes. Well, there are a couple of ways that you can do that. So you store information in terms of language, visual images, and action, muscle responses to things. So those are the three ways that your brain stores information. And as adults, as teenagers, even, we tend to lean heavily on language as the major storage unit, but it's critical that we access the other two. And the journal book that I have written is designed just for that. It's designed to access the other two forms of representation because it has a story on one page. The facing page has a couple of simple questions, but it's blank so that you can draw, you can scribble, you could write if you want with language, or you could take the action of just, ripping the page up. I say you have to tape it back together to read the essay on the other side, but you get access to those storage boxes in your brain that you wouldn't get access to if you were just focused on language. And if you think about it, very early experiences are not stored in terms of language. All right. They're stored in terms of visual imagery or action. And so I want to get access to those because they jump into the present and they influence how I respond to someone in the present. So it's very important to get access to those other parts of yourself.
And when we start having more access to those parts, and maybe our children, we get triggers from certain behaviors of
Absolutely.
our children.
Hmm.
How do we know that that behavior is an actual trigger from something that's stored in us and we can't really consciously access at that moment? What
It's
can we do then?
okay. That's a great question. So the first assumption that everyone needs to make is when something triggers you, it has a history, right? And it has a very deep history. So make a note of that and be intentional about going back to that experience and taking a deeper dive into what's this trigger about? Why did I have that reaction? Because it doesn't fit the situation. It's over the top in comparison to the situation, but it's trying to give me good information. It's trying to say, hey, there's something here that you need to pay attention to. And it's probably not stored in terms of language. It's stored either in terms of the visual image or in terms of muscle movement and action reaction. So go take a deeper dive, find out what it is so that you can unlock it, understand it, and have a natural modification and a natural reaction to understanding that part of yourself.
Yeah, that's very powerful. That's something I'm personally working on lately. It's on every time an emotion comes up that's really there's fire in that
Mhm.
emotion, the first thing I'm doing is pause.
Right,
Because I feel like, and that's how I break the pattern. If
right,
I'm not gonna shout, I'm not gonna walk away. I'm
right.
just gonna pause, take a deep breath, and then name the emotion. Okay,
Yeah,
what am I
get
feeling?
curious about it and get curious about where it started. It's got a root to it. Whatever interaction you're engaging in is remnant, is reminding you of something that happened much earlier.
And what would you say is the most important impact, the biggest impact you have created in people who you have worked with? What has been the biggest impact?
Oh, I think it's self understanding. Right? When you can uncover the trigger that sends you into a behavior that is inappropriate or distances someone else, then you can choose. How do I want to connect with this person? We're born connected. We want to stay connected. We value connection with others. So understanding the triggers for connection, critical to your physical health and to your emotional health.
Absolutely. So, anybody listening to this episode, what would be the best way to break with those patterns too? They might be disconnected from their children or in a very reactive communication. What would be the first thing for them to say, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on from now
Yeah,
on to
the
break
the
that pattern?
easiest thing for someone who wants to understand themselves and start this journey is actually to get a copy of the journal book, Read, Reflect, Respond, the 3 R's of growth and change, and begin your own journey to understand that you do have pieces of history that are packed away in terms of action and in terms of visual images, and uncovering those will just lighten everything, and it will inform you about the areas in your emotional baggage and psyche that you need to take a deeper dive into.
I love that because it's a very specific journaling book. It's not general prompts or general
Right,
just write about your day. It's so
right.
specific, and it's really intentional, and it really targets the things you can work on, you can learn from. On my personal experience, that's when everything changed, is when I moved the focus from how can I support my children, change certain things that are triggering me and making me so angry, to what's going on inside
What's
me.
happening in me?
That was the biggest change ever
Because
in my whole
there's a
parenting.
history to all of
Yeah,
that. There's a history. And when you
absolutely.
find it, you now have choice. But if you don't go taking that deeper dive, you have no choice.
Absolutely. Gloria, that has been amazing.
Well, I've
So
enjoyed it.
inspiring. Thank you so much.
You're
And let's get
welcome.
journaling.
You're welcome.